Welcome to understanding Anurag's Phygital Montessori approach, which we call as Anurag at Home, which is physical and digital Montessori based education. I'd like to start at the outset by quoting Dr. Maria Montessori, which forms the crux of the Montessori methodology. Our care of the child should be governed not by the desire to make him learn things, but by the endeavor always to keep burning within him that light which is called intelligence. The spark or that sense of intrigue, sense of curiosity is what would drive all of us and the children especially to achieve excellence. And that is the foundation of the Montessori methodology which it strokes and encourages in every child. When we talk about Anurag per se, so it was founded in the year 1992 by Mrs. Shyamala Manohar for her love and passion that she has for children. It was South Bangalore's first Montessori school and the sixth in Bangalore overall when it started in 1992. We are completely and firmly imbibed in the beauty of the Montessori system of education, as it is a completely holistic approach and addresses not just the child's educational needs but the physical, emotional, social, and cognitive facets as well. From the credentials perspective, the three teachers and Mr. Shyamala together have a combined Montessori experience of over 90 years. Mrs. Shyamala was also interviewed by All India Radio in 1995, where she had to explain and elucidate the difference and the advantage of Montessori education when compared to the mainstream, because that is when Montessori actually started growing interest in Bangalore city and in South India as well. The next thing, she was awarded for her academic rigor and for what she has contributed by the Rotary Inner Wheel Southwest Bangalore in 2003. Anurag has always been trusted in the name in the Montessori world, and apart from the Indian Montessori Training Center, which spearheads the training of Montessori adults for all those who want to pursue becoming a Montessori tutor or a parent or an adult in this field, they are actually asked to visit Anurag as a part of their course, and so do a lot of centers across Malaysia, Singapore, and Southeast Asia, where they visit Anurag and they physically observe how the children are being trained, how they are actually working in the Montessori environment, because Anurag has always been a pure Montessori education based school. And finally, when the IMC actually started recognizing and accrediting various schools, Anurag was again one of the first and has always been accredited by the Indian Montessori Center. From our facilities perspective, so what we started on the top left is how the children actually enter the school, where you can see some of the materials laid out, and you can see some more from the shelves and everything else that is laid out on the top right. At the bottom left, you can see benches at the back where the children actually sit during their snack time and have their snacks together. And then in the bottom right is where they would do water activities in the sunlit area, so it's much warmer. As you can see, the school has been designed in an environment that is not just friendly, cheerful, bright, but also keeping in mind everything that a child would need to be self-reliant, which is again the crux of Montessori. Our facilities also have a play area outside, which has a sandpit with a slide and a jungle gym. And the stairs, as you see how they go up. Anurag started 92 in what you see as a red door below. But then in 2000, we also extended to the first floor. So what you see the stairs, again, you might wonder from the child's safety perspective, but then again, the children are taken one at a time, and there are adults in the platform and along the stairs as well to make sure there is no running and nothing. So, in the last 20 odd years in the new environment upstairs, there has never been any kind of an incident regarding any concerns with stairs. Going further, I'd like us to look at a very beautiful perspective created by an American educator that explains why and how Montessori compares to mainstream education. And then we can go further ahead. Let's have a look now.
My three children attend a Montessori school. And recently a fellow parent told me of her own bright, engaged, inquisitive son who had attended Montessori for a few years until a job loss in the family forced her to enroll him in a nearby, free, conventional public school. As she picked him up from his new bus stop, day after day, she began to notice something. She said, I saw the light in his eyes dimming. His flame was extinguishing. She didn't talk about her son's grades at the new school, nor about the teacher qualifications, class size, or extracurricular activities. She didn't talk about how he would compete with China or increase our GDP. She talked about the flame inside him, dimming, extinguishing. To me, the fanning of this inner flame, the inner drive to learn and to develop, is the core contrast between Montessori schools and conventional schools. Conventional schools assume children need incentives for learning. Gold stars, A's, honor roll ribbons, popcorn parties. If they don't respond, they must be dealt punishments, bad grades, trips to the principal's office, etc. Montessori schools assume the opposite. Children do not need to be forced to learn. In fact, children are naturally interested in learning. Take a look at any child prior to kindergarten. They touch everything, pick it up, turn it over, taste it. Prior to setting foot in that first classroom, they've learned how to stand, walk, swim, sing, count, ride a bike, tell stories and jokes and lies. Some can even read. And then these energetic, engaged, accomplished 6-year-olds turn into 12-year-olds who ask, are we getting graded on this? Or is this going to be on the test? That flame they had at age 6 didn't burn out on its own. We smothered it. In contrast, Montessori schools stoke that flame by promoting hands-on, self-paced, collaborative, challenging, and joyful learning. They encourage divergent thinking instead of convergent thinking, innovation instead of standardization. Montessori does all this with no grades, no tests, no homework. How? Well, out of many reasons, here are two. Mixed-age classrooms. Montessori classrooms have 3-year age ranges. 3 to 6-year-olds in one class, 6 to 9-year-olds in another, and so on. The age mix allows older students to be leaders, mentors, and to help teach lessons, while younger students have the experience of working with older classmates. The teacher does not stand at the front, delivering the same information to 30 children while trying to keep all of them on the same page. Instead, the teacher moves around the room, working with students, one-on-one or in small groups. The age mix allows a child working on, for example, addition, to sit near another student working on multiplication. Each can see not only what they'll be doing in the near future and where they've been in the past, but why they're learning what they're learning and how it fits into the big picture. Seeing the big picture allows students to take ownership of their learning, a critical element in fostering each child's natural learning desire. Which leads to point 2, grabbing that student's interest while it's hot. A Montessori teacher told me about an 8-year-old girl in her class interested in long division. After demonstrating some examples, the teacher watched the girl create her own simple division problem. But after finding the quotient, the girl added another digit to the dividend, and another, and continued the calculation into the hundreds, thousands, then 10,000s, 100,000s, then millions, billions, trillions. As the calculations began to near the bottom of the page, the teacher, thinking quickly, brought over more paper and some tape. Hours later, when the girl decided she was done, there were so many sheets of paper taped to each other that when the teacher taped the first one to the ceiling, the last one hung all the way to the floor. Children in Montessori follow their interests wherever that passion leads, however quickly it leads them, regardless of what other students in the class are working on. Can you imagine this little girl having any problem whatsoever with calculus in high school, when she already does ceiling-to-floor long division problems at age 8? Can you imagine the look in her eyes when her mom picks her up from school? Montessori is the best method of schooling I have found for children to joyfully and effectively learn independence, responsibility, self-discipline, leadership, initiative, strong academics, and a lifetime love of learning. I urge you to visit a Montessori classroom to see for yourself. Sit in a class for 30 minutes. See the light in the children's eyes.
When we look at and understand this perspective, I want us to take it a step further. What does Montessori actually mean? There are 5 core principles that form the Montessori education. The first is respect the child. Many times we see that children, when they actually come to school, they don't have the freedom of when they actually want to do things. The freedom of choice is something which is primarily given to a student or a child in the Montessori system. There is no judgment, but observation and helping the child in what he or she wants to pursue and do. Of course, there will be certain rules and guidelines which need to be adhered to, but within that frame is where all of the possibilities are shown to the child, and that is what is really taken forward. The absorbent mind is basically, when you look at a child, their mind is like a sponge. It's absorbing everything around them, the good, the bad, and everything else. What happens here is basically when they look at the adults around them, either at home or in the school, and the other children as well, they are absorbing everything. So it is very, very crucial that the things that they are focused on, what interests them, and the curiosity is channeled in a manner that is appropriate and also based on the age, which comes to the next thing, which is sensitive periods. Every child needs to acquire certain skills, and it may vary slightly from an age perspective of each and every one. And the first, again, like when we say respecting the child, there is no judgment, there is no bias, but what is shown here is the child improving at their own pace. The same thing being said, writing skills, listening skills, and all the other skills are actually taught at relevant periods based on how the child is progressing. And that is why, though there is something like a curricula that needs to be adhered to for the first, second, and third year Montessori, it is not to say that this is the syllabus. There is no syllabus. It is defined and designed for every child specifically. The prepared environment, as you saw earlier when we showed the facilities of Anurag, all of it is something where the child can be self-reliant, they can reach things, everything is safe for the child, and everything has been prepared for the child so that they can do things by themselves. Finally, when we come to auto education, this is everything that comes together. So basically, when, as mentioned in the previous video, the first, second, and third year Montessori students, which start from 2.5 to 3 years old, all the way to 6 to 6.5, all of them sit together, they work together. So each child is actually able to see what they're learning and what is something that they've already learned, or what is it that they'll be learning next. The holistic perspective gives them the encouragement to make sure that they actually learn things quickly and nicely, but at their own pace. And since they work together, this is the social interaction that also encourages children who may be a little introvert, or children who may hesitate talking out. The beauty of the system is, since it's not set as a classroom with benches and chairs, but the teacher interacts by going around with each and every one of the children with a ratio of 1 is to 5 or 1 is to 8. It makes it very easy, not only for the adult, but also for the children to reach out when they want any specific help. And that is the beauty of the system. When we look at this and take it a step further, in the current scenario where it is Montessori at home, how is this reflected? The first thing is giving a schedule for the child. As adults, as humans, we ourselves are so imbibed with certain things that we actually have a body clock. If at work or at home you're used to having lunch at a particular time, your tummy is going to grumble at, say, 1 o'clock if you haven't started having food. It's precisely the same for our mind. And for a child, having that schedule gives them the clarity and focus. So making sure that the child actually has a dedicated place and time for them to work every day to show that this is when the school would start, given our personal challenges, our other commitments, work commitments, and everything else. There may be certain things that the parents are already occupied with, but making sure that you define a time based on which the school would start every day for the child is very, very important. It may be a dining table where you sit every day, it may be the child's room, it may be your bedroom. Nonetheless, having a dedicated place and a dedicated time will make sure both you and the child can focus. The second thing is, in Montessori, as you would have seen in the Anurag facilities pictures, there aren't any tables and chairs like how you would normally expect in a school. But in the Montessori methodology, we work on mats, on large sitting mats, because some of the materials and activities require a little space. And also the fact that sitting on the ground helps our spinal cord and our brain to be erect and really helps the child to focus as well physically. The third thing is insisting that the child works on one activity at a time. Though as a parent myself, this can be challenging at times, but giving them this discipline from day one is very, very important. And believe me, this challenge is faced not just at home, at school as well. But nonetheless, this is something that has to be enforced from day one. Leading to the second thing, in Montessori, a lot of activities may be so a lot of activities do have a lot of material, and putting them back once it's done also has a sequence and a way it should be done, rather than just picking up everything and throwing it in the box or the bag. So making sure that you follow the video that is given as a virtual enabler and showing to the child how they have to wind up before they take the next activity is something that has to be followed from day one. Leading to probably the most challenging thing. We as adults have n number of distractions that are already there due to our commitments and the way things are because of the pandemic. That being said, when the adult is actually interacting with the child and helping them focus and teaching them the steps that they need to follow, for those minutes at least, kindly request the parents to actually make sure that they minimize the distractions. So don't look at your phone, don't look at anything else, but please focus and show, as our actions speak louder than words, that this is important and this is what the child actually has to do. Finally, all the virtual enablers that Anurag has is for the consumption of the adult, not for the child. Because keeping Montessori in mind, the child actually has to work on things physically, but not looking at a screen. Going ahead, when we talk about Anurag's approach, it's a comprehensive approach which uses both physical and virtual enablers, and it is completely Montessori based. It's effectively utilizing very easy to use online tools and enablers that You don't really need to learn or pick up because they are so intuitive. It has been designed in a way that makes it easy and is also the same across devices. The first point is that the appropriate guidance, what an adult needs in a Montessori way, is what is provided as videos and other enablers that are given. The second thing is that there's a defined schedule and a sequence designed again into Montessori pedagogy based on the child's current stage. So, and finally, which leads to the third aspect, which is there is always a connect with the adults in Anurag that the parent can have, either through WhatsApp, through phone call, so that any help that they require regarding clarifications or addressing concerns is something that they can do on all the 5 working days. Let's look at the content that goes into the approach itself. So when you talk about Phygital, it is the physical and the digital. So basically, the first thing from the physical perspective, there is an activity box that contains stationery material, Montessori material, and other study aids and activities as well. And we also have, as part of the box, certain books based on fun topics and things that the child needs to learn which are age appropriate. Things like community helpers, transportation, the weather, and everything else as well. From the digital perspective, the tool that we use is the Google Calendar as well as the Google Classroom, wherein a student, based on a Gmail that is provided, is enrolled into the Google Classroom specific for the year that they belong to. And using the Google Calendar that shows the schedule, the parent can actually see what are the activities that are needed. And also, when they click on the link, which is on the calendar coming from the Google Classroom, they can look at the virtual enabler as well. Once they go to the Google Classroom, they'll have to submit or turn in the activity so that the teachers can keep track of how the child is progressing. And also, you have the ability to comment, upload pictures, videos, as sometimes the teacher would request, so that they are making sure that the child is doing it correctly and in the Montessori way. From notification and interaction perspective, WhatsApp is used. Again, there is a school group that you're already, if once enrolled, the parents would be included in, wherein you get notifications of any updates that are needed or requested. So the next thing that we have to look at would be how we actually go about looking at it from the Google Calendar perspective. So as a sample, you can see here there are sessions that are there starting from 9 till 3 in the afternoon, but just want to point out that here it's separate topics that are given, wherein it starts with action rhymes and daily stotrams, the language, sensorial, but they're given as 1 hour only because then it's easier to touch on the screen on the mobile or to click on the laptop. But these activities don't take an hour, right? Like the action rhymes would take maybe 5 to 10 minutes at most. The slokas are the same amount of time or even lesser. And there is not really a time specific thing that is actually measured for all the others. But then again, just to show it easily is why we've given a time. And like I'd mentioned, to start the session with, based on which is convenient from a time perspective for the adult that is working with the child and the child as well, is where you can schedule these on a regular time every day. It doesn't have to start from 9 as I mentioned here. And also the child has the flexibility to choose which of these that are assigned for a particular day that they would like to start with, and the order of them as well. It's not like they have to do this in a particular order, but then again, respecting the child is what is priority here. The other thing is, the only thing that is fixed from a time perspective would be the 4 p.m. session on every Wednesday, a working Wednesday, unless it's a holiday for any festival or any national holiday. So from that perspective, at 4 to 5 is where there'd be live Zoom sessions where there'll be live interactions on the Zoom platform that will be scheduled, which will be on various topics like artwork or maybe storytelling or maybe yoga or maybe just interaction, or it can be about festivals or anything per se that would cater to the social interaction perspective of the child. When we look at some of the aspects from a Montessori perspective, let's start with language. So here as an example, I have the sandpaper alphabets, which is one of the first things the second year would actually start working on. And in fact, for this year, it will be the first year itself, given the age group of the children that we have right now. So the language, or English to start with, is learned in lower cases and in the phonetic way. The child does not write, they actually learn how the alphabet is written using the sandpaper alphabets. They learn the vowels first and then the consonants, not A, B, C, D. Like I said, it's phonetic based, it's A, B, K, and things like that. So the sequence that is given as part of the schedule is catered and in that way. The repetition that is also included as part of the schedule is to build their confidence in each of the alphabets. And finally, since it's phonetic and based on what we use, the child has a brilliant foundation that is created that will enable them to actually make it easier as they go forward with spellings and things like that. Let's look at the physical and digital enabler now. The physical is the the Montessori material that is provided as the sandpaper alphabets, and the digital is basically the video that the parent would actually have to observe before they teach the child. There would be certain overview and instructions initially. There is sufficient time, it's just cropped here.
When I say umbrella, can you hear? When I say under, can you see? Hear? When I say sun, can you hear?
So as you can see, each of the alphabets actually would have their own video, and in the instructions it will also be mentioned clearly. If you observe, the adult is only using 2 fingers to actually follow through the entire alphabet, and that again is very, very important. The next thing, let's look at how a child who has actually learned this virtually last year has submitted.
Slow on me. Good. What is this? Very good. Do it again. As in and fun, run, and turn, mum. Very good.
So as you can see, the parent is actually helping the child grasp more words, but then again, forming words and sentences and everything else will be subsequently explained and taught with using various other activities as such. Let's look at math again. So math, this is basically how the concept of numbers is actually taught in Montessori using the number rods activity. So these are normally wooden material that range from an inch or two all the way up to almost 3 feet. But the same thing has been replicated in a manner that is easier for use at home, wherein it is much smaller and compact, but the underlying learning is the same. The experiential learning that they learn here makes them understand that 2 is bigger than 1, 3 is bigger than 2, 4 is bigger than 3, so on and so forth from 1 to 10. So this is again given at the appropriate age, and it is sequenced in a manner wherein once they start with this, they start with the other aspects of all the other ways where they learn the numbers beyond 10, and then they learn the concepts of units, tens and hundreds and thousands, then do math calculations like addition, subtraction, multiplication as well. And here the foundation that is given is what really helps them in all the other math functions that they learn as well. Let's take a look at the digital enabler that the teacher has created. So there again, there is a little overview at the beginning so that the adult is aware of what is happening. Here you can see that these are number rods that are actually placed on a mat. Like I said, the size is smaller, but nonetheless, it's exactly the same principle. So here you can see that there is a red and blue painted on the rods, and that's where the child actually learns to align them. So you can see that sequentially it is being placed in a manner, and there are also small white cards that are on the mat that the teacher would consecutively place once she places all the rods. Observe that the rods are held in a particular manner, and it is done in a fashion that is expected to be followed always. That is 1 to 10. But like you'd have observed, the teacher didn't start saying anything.
One.
Rod of
One.
Let's look at how a student again who has not learnt it physically in Anurag but virtually has done the same thing.
A rod of two. Count. One, two. A rod of two. Place it. How should you place it, Anvi? With two fingers, right? Use both your hands. Yes. Place it properly. How should you place two?
Going ahead, let's look at the sensorial aspect. So here is basically, like I said, in Montessori, the other aspects of the child are also catered to. Here there's not really a video because it's just an explanation that is needed of the materials, the processes, and what the purpose of the activity also is. There is a blindfold that is given as part of the activity box. So what the parent is actually asked here to do is help the child grow their olfactory sense, which is basically the sense of taste. So basically the child has to pair the herbs that are similar in taste that are placed in front of her. So this again is something to help the child develop all the sensorial aspects. The same is there, activities for sound, for touch, for taste, and hearing as well. Finally, when you look at the artwork perspective, there are art books that are given as part of the activity box.
Good.
Excellent. And that covers various things from regular painting to color pencils to block printing as well, like what you see here.
Okay, whichever one,
wherever you want, do light green also, no problem, Shita.
When we talk about the Anurag at Home concept, there is a very clear partnership that actually would stand out than normal interaction between the parents and the teachers. The first thing is the fact that including your child in everyday chores may seem very normal and thing to say, but from an educational perspective, it's brilliant and can't really be replicated in many ways. So including them in dusting and cleaning and cooking really helps. For example, at home, we actually make sure that the children actually take the clothes from the laundry baskets, they take it to the washing machine and actually put it in for washing, and once it's done, they actually help us drying them as well. This may sound very simple as something they're doing, but including them really encourages them to be self-sufficient, understanding that they are also responsible for things, and it enhances their vocabulary because when we are doing activities is when their curiosity is enhanced and they actually start questioning. That is how these things builds up their confidence in a very simple manner. The other thing is the fact that I'm sure we'd have all heard that the helicopter parent of what it is. The very important thing in Montessori is that completing the activity is not important, rather the child being able to do it themselves is what is extremely vital. So the guidance that is needed is just enough for them to do it, not the adult making sure that they do it continuously. Give them the space, give them the time. Once you show them how it should be done, let them do it. If they have any question, let them ask you. If you feel they're doing the wrong way, maybe ask them to hint at them to do it again rather than doing it forcefully. The next thing is basically the schedule is, again, like I said, based on Montessori pedagogy. So it is very, very important that the sequence is followed. For example, say Mondays or Tuesdays activity could not be done because either the child was unwell or there was some event at home or there was something. Then, rather than going directly to Wednesday, please make sure that whatever was given or what day was missed, those activities are done and then the others are taken up. You can do, say, the language on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday together on Wednesday, but only in that order. It is very, very important. Ensuring that the adult actually follows the sequence, the wording, the language used in the videos that we provide is extremely important because they are specific and connote a meaning from a Montessori perspective, and all these subsequent activities are built up using the same language. So please make sure that the sequence of steps is followed correctly like how it is shown. And like you saw earlier, they are not complicated but explained in a very simple manner and do not require the adult to have any Montessori background. Finally, the staff of Anurag would be available between 11 and 12 and 5 and 6 for reaching out for the parents for any clarifications or questions. And again, the time again is flexible from you can contact the teacher and make sure that if any help is required, when it is required via WhatsApp or phone. Going ahead, on anuragmontessori.com, you can look at a lot of reviews that we have. One thing I would say very happily and proudly is the fact that in all the reviews that we've got, there's not one review that has been given by any parent, student that is actually negative, which was extremely satisfying for Team Anurag. So we really request you actually go through that to give you an idea. To end, I would like to say one very important thing. Why choose Anurag? First of all, it is completely Montessori based. Secondly, there is actually almost zero screen time for your child apart from the Zoom session that we have once a week. The continuous review and availability of a Montessori trained adult will make sure that the progress of the child is appropriate and as needed. The intuitive usage and of the physical and the virtual tools is something that is married in such a simple but brilliant way that makes it very easy, regardless of device that the parent actually uses, be it a phone or a tablet or a computer. The videos that we have created, several hundreds actually, equip the parent to give the right assistance to the child. And the reason why it has been done in such a manner is because we do not expect the parent to have any Montessori background or a teaching background, but it should be simple enough for them to understand and work with their child. It's, like I said, designed to address any variance of the parent's exposure to the Montessori system. It's a very comprehensive approach ensuring that Montessori can continue at home, and it uses optimally both the physical and the virtual enablers that are given. And finally, and most importantly, Montessori is making education and learning completely fun oriented, with the core principles always being curiosity and encouraging the child to lay a very strong foundation for all of their future as well. So I really hope and I express that the Montessori methodology that Anurag has seen for the last 30 years is the best that we can give our child, and hope that you make the right decision as well. These are our contact details. Again, please do look us up on anuragmontessori.com. If you have any questions, you have the number of the director, Mrs. Shamala Manohar. You can reach out to her, or you can drop an email as well. I'd like to end by saying the foundation of Anurag, which is every child has the potential to be a genius. Thank you so much for your time and interest in Anurag. Stay safe, stay home.